We encourage y'all to have your mic muted unless you're speaking. Turn on your camera if you're comfortable, and if you're able to do so and comfortable doing so, please turn on your camera. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat, as we will have a Q&A portion later in the event. And I would like to welcome y'all to, for joining our event today and attending our Professor After Hours event, a collaboration event with CITRAL, the Transfer Student Center, and the ONDA Student Center. My name is Sofia Sanabria. Please call me Sophie. I identify with she, her, AR pronouns. I'm the grad peer mentor for the ONDA Student Center and a Master's in Education student with UCSB's Graduate School of Education, UTSA. And today I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Laura Rendon. I'll begin by reading a bit about her in her biography. So Dr. Laura Rendon is a professor emerita at the University of Texas, San Antonio. Her current research focuses on access retention and the graduation of low-income first-generation college students and the transformation of teaching and learning to emphasize wholeness and social justice. Dr. Rendon earned a PhD in higher education administration from the University of Michigan and Harvard. She holds a master's in counseling and guidance and psychology from Texas A&M University Kingsville, and she earned a BA in English and journalism from the University of Houston, and holds an Associate of Arts degree from San Antonio College. Dr. Rendon also attended Laredo Community College. Dr. Rendon is the author of Senti Pensante, Sensing, Thinking, Pedagogy, Educating for Wholeness, Social Justice, and Liberation, and is also the co-editor of Transforming the First Year of College for Students of Color, Educating a New Majority, and the Racial and Ethnic Diversity in Higher Education, ASHE reader. Thank you, Dr. Rendon, for joining us. How are you today?
I'm good. I just did another talk, so so this is my second one for UC Santa Barbara. I tell people it's my Santa Barbara day, so here I am. It's 7 p.m. in Texas right now, so it's getting dark. But thank you for the great introduction, Sophie, and it's my pleasure to be with all of you this evening and talking a little bit about my life, and I hope to learn about your life as well. I already did just a little bit, but my sense is that they're phenomenal students at UCSB, and I'm just so proud of all the students that are out there. You're the next generation. You're taking over where we left off, and I'm proud to see you. I'm excited to see you. I'm optimistic. And it's just, really great that you all are doing what you do. I'm going to speak a little bit, and then I'm going to open it to Q&A. And just to share a little bit about my background. So I was born along the US-Mexico border in Laredo, Texas. I live in San Antonio right now. I'm 150 miles away from where I used to live in Laredo. At the time that I was born, Laredo was, I believe it was designated the poorest city in the nation, or among the poorest cities at least. So growing up along the border, which as you well know, and you live close to the, you know about the San Diego border and other areas, the border extending all the way from Texas out all the way to New Mexico and Arizona, California. Lots of chaos taking place there. But it was very peaceful when I was growing up, very peaceful. In fact, I remember as a child that we used to go across, as we used to call it, vamos al otro lado. We're going to the other side, which was Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. So you've got Nuevo Laredo, Mexico, the Rio Grande River, and Laredo, Texas. So you've got Texas, the Rio Grande, and then Mexico. So there's that river separating the US and Mexico. And it was common for people to have relatives in Mexico and Nuevo Laredo, and we would go over there and go to restaurants, go shopping, go to the market. And people got along, and there was just this sense of community. It was one big happy family. So what is happening now is very different from what was happening when I grew up. So I'm the first in my family to go to college. So I'm first generation, as they call us. I am, of course, growing up in Laredo, being very poor, grew up in poverty. And, you know, those were tough times for my family. My parents were separated when I was about 3 or 4 years old. And my mom had to take care of, be a single parent, taking care of me and my two other sisters. So she took on odd jobs, such as, you know, picking crops, cleaning motel rooms, working at a restaurant, the night shift. Uh, she did all that she could to really help the family survive. So, you know, my parents weren't really around very much because my mom, she was either working or sleeping because was at the night shift. My dad would come and pick us up on weekends. So we kind of had to fend for ourselves. And so I remember living off cans of Dinty Moore beef stew, um, you know, those banquet 39-cent um, frozen dinners, SpaghettiOs. And we just, you know, that was our experience. That was our experience growing up. And those experiences are also, you know, they're in my body. They're, you know, it's in our DNA. Some of that is part of trauma, you know, and collective trauma, intergenerational trauma. But in families and in our legacies, there's always the person that breaks the cycle. There's always the person who the others are saying, we're waiting for you, you know, in a spiritual sense. And I guess I was that kid. Because very early on, I remember that I wanted to be a teacher. That was my goal. My goal was to go to college and get an education, and because teachers were what I knew, you know, and policemen and nuns. You know, I didn't know scientists. I didn't know architects. You know, I didn't know politicians. I just knew the people that I came into contact with. So how could I dream of being other things when I didn't even know that they existed? But I knew that I needed to have a college degree to be a teacher. And so in the 8th grade, I made the most important decision of my life. I remember that I was sitting there, it was my English classroom. And that day, the counselor came in with a bunch of forms. And she said to us, today you have to sign these forms and indicate whether you want to be on the vocational track or the academic track. And so for me, that was an easy one to make because I said, you know, is that to go to college? He said, yes. I said, I want the academic track. So I come home, my mother's there all tired from, you know, her work. And I said to her, all excited, voy a ir al colegio. No, I'm going to college. And she looked at me and she said, estás loca, estás loca. And she said, you know, who do you think you are? You know, college is not for us. College is for the rich. And you shouldn't even be thinking that way. And I think part of it now, as I think back, because she only went to the 2nd or 3rd grade, she had no information about college. She didn't know what it entailed. She didn't like the fact that maybe I would be leaving Laredo. And she was tired of working. I mean, working at that restaurant was really, really hard work, and they paid very little. I mean, for the whole week, she would make like $15 plus tips. And they didn't give a whole lot of tips in those days. So, like many mothers, she was expecting me to graduate from high school, and then she could quit work, and I would assume the role of being the breadwinner in the family. So that's not really what she wanted to hear. At some level, I understood that, though I couldn't articulate it. I couldn't give words to it. So I decided to hold on to my dreams. And when I graduated from high school, I went on to the local community college. And then I ran out of courses to take. And that's when I went to San Antonio College. That was my first time to live away from my family unit. And my parents weren't happy about it because, they wanted to keep all of us close. So, but I left. I got an AA from San Antonio College. And about 2 years ago, they gave me an award for outstanding former student, which is really, really great. But from there, I transferred to the University of Houston. And that was tough to convince my parents. I mean, they were against it. They didn't want me to leave Laredo. And I left anyway. I was very upset with them. But I left and I finished my degree in English and journalism at the University of Houston. So I became the first person in my family to earn an AA and a BA. And that made it possible for my little sister coming behind me to go to college without any problems. And for her kids, her 3 sons, to go to college as well. For low-income first-generation students, the tradition of going to college is not well established in the family. It's not well established because the family members have not gone to college themselves. And so unless someone in the family changes that history continues. So no college, no college, no college. But when somebody goes in there and makes that shift, that really changes the way that the family begins to look at education. There's much more openness to it. There's much more understanding and knowing that, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I remember when I went to Houston, and that was the big city. Laredo was a small city, and Houston it is the largest city in Texas. And we took the Greyhound bus because I didn't have a car. So my mom took the Greyhound bus with me about 4 or 5 hours. And so we get to my dorm where I was going to live. And right outside the dorm, as we were walking in, there's some bushes there. And she goes, you need to be careful, Laura, because, in those bushes, some man can hide and rape you and attack you. I was like, oh my God. I mean, for moms, this is just the way they think, right? I mean, it's like something's going to happen to my daughter. But nothing like that ever happened, so thank God. But I think back at those days now, and I smile because while I think she was proud that I was going to college, she was also afraid because she really didn't understand, other than this strange thing was taking my daughter away from her. And I made it a point, knowing that finances were important, to always send money home. So I never used up all of my financial aid for myself. I always sent money. To this day, I send money home. I have an older sister. She's 10 years older than I am. Her name is Elba. And she's the daughter of my mom's first marriage. But she always lived with her, so we consider her to be a sister. We don't look at half sister or anything. She's just a sister. But she's in a nursing home now. And about 2 months ago, there was a virus outbreak in that nursing home, and I had to work to get her out and put her somewhere else, but then all of them closed. They weren't allowing anybody in. So I had to deal with that trauma. And so thankfully now she is out and she's in a better place. But, I have somebody who goes there and visits her, and I pay for that person so that, she has a friend, and, she knows that we haven't forgotten about her. I call her every day as well. But I always send money home to my mom, always, always. throughout throughout my life. And even when my mom passed away in 2010, she was very worried about who would take care of Elva. That was her biggest concern. Because Elva had no college education. She didn't finish high school. My mom made the difficult decision when we were little to remove Elva from middle school because my mom had no money for daycare. And so Elva's job was to take care of me and my little sister. So she never finished high school, let alone go to college. So I've never forgotten that. And so I told my mom that I would take care of her. Excuse me. So my experience made it possible for my little sister, to go to college, and she became a teacher, and her kids also went to college. So, you know, I talked about when my mom was afraid of me going to Houston to get a bachelor's. That was nothing compared to when I was to leave Texas to go to Michigan, like another state. That's like, wow, you know. And at the time, when I told her I was leaving, she developed this horrible pain in her chest. I mean, nobody could figure out what was going on. I think she was having panic attacks. In those days, I didn't know what a panic attack was, and I know now. And so she lost a lot of weight, and her message to me was, you're going to leave, you're not going to see me die, you're not going to see me my last breath, all of that, you know, guilt trip. So I made a decision that I never told her about. I said to myself, I'm going to go to Michigan, and if she continues that way, I'll go to Houston, because I had been accepted in Houston as well, where they have, you know, great medical center. And, but I left to Michigan. And after I left, she had the episode one more time. And then all of a sudden, se le quitó. Everything was fine. Apparently she met some doctor who gave her a pill or some tablet that she put under her tongue, and that took care of it. Never had that pain again. So I left, and it's one of the sacrifices that I think that we make in terms of, you know, making the decision to go to college, that it makes you different. When you come back, people aren't quite sure how to deal with you. I mean, you're now, you know, you're now different. You're not the same person that you were. And so at the beginning, I found it kind of hard to deal with that discrepancy. And later on, I decided, okay, this is what I'm going to do. When I go home, I'm not going to talk about me. I'm going to talk about them. So, like my mom, how are you feeling? You know, how's Selva? You know, what did you do today? You know, those kinds of things, but not very much about me. And so that's the way that I dealt with that sort of sacrifice that I needed to make. Because part of leaving is that disconnection that you have with your family, and higher education changes you. I think in very good ways, but when you're dealing with a family that has never been a part of higher ed, then you have to deal with the difference that is going to be there. It's not going to be as connected as before. And I think another sacrifice was finding it difficult to find a partner that, you know, who's going to be with somebody, a Latina with a PhD, you know, when, you know, there's people out there that, you know, don't have any education, and how's that going to work out? So those are some of the sacrifices. So I guess, you know, my proud moments were when I was able to accomplish what no one in my family had accomplished before, and go all the way to the University of Michigan to earn a doctorate. And I was really, really proud about that. And so I could then go back, and even though my mom didn't understand, she would, when she would meet people, she would say, "Esta es mi hija, es doctora, es doctora." And that's very touching, you know, when you hear that. And but you know, then again, you in Laredo, because so few people have doctorates, people don't know how to deal with you. Like, I remember coming home one time with my best friend Tencha, and her aunt was there, and Tencha says, "Oh, you know, Laura's coming. You know, ella sacó su doctorado," and the tía says, "Ah, qué bueno, mijita, que ya eres enfermera." so, so she thought I had become a nurse. And because that's what she understood, and so that's just what came into her mind, which is kind of funny now, you know. But well, actually, I cracked up at that time as well. So I guess I'm going to stop here and see if you have any questions, and I'm happy to answer them as best as I can. I also sent Maggie an article that I wrote from the barrio to the academy. I don't know, Maggie, if you've had a chance to send that out, but that is probably the most popular article I have ever written. And I've written by now quite a bit. But for some reason, people tend to really resonate with that article. And it's been used not only in education, but in sociology and ethnic studies and psychology. So that article has circulated quite a bit. And it's my story, going from the barrio of Laredo, Texas, all the way to the University of Michigan. So Maggie, did that article go out? Oh, you're sending
Yes,
it
I
now?
forwarded it to Malapon, so she had it. I sent it to her.
Okay, perfect. Because that'll give you a good sense of my life, my journey. And very recently, I wrote a memoir that appears, and I can send that to you as well, that appears in the Handbook of Research and Theory in Higher Education. And basically, I talk about my life there as well, using Gloria Anzaldua's Camino de Conocimiento as a framework to write about my story. So let me stop here and see if you have any questions.
I actually do have a question.
Okay.
So I did read the article, and it was like, it really did resonate with me. Like, I was almost like crying at the end, because I'm like, wow, like the shared experience, I didn't understand like how actually shared it is. But in the article, you did mention like the intersection of your identities. Did you feel like the identities affected your involvement in research?
Okay, you're kind of breaking up. Can you repeat it, please? For some reason, you were breaking up. We were talking about identities, but I didn't get the question.
Did you feel your identities affected your involvement in research?
Did I feel my identities affected my research?
Your involvement in research?
Yeah, I mean, who you are always impacts, what you do. Like I've worked with a lot of doctoral students and master's students in my day, and usually they will research something that had an impact on them. For example, that's true in my life as well. I mean, my research was on students in community colleges. Well, I went to a community college. I want to see students transfer. I don't want to see them just stop their education there. I want to see them go on and earn bachelor's and master's and doctoral degrees and professional degrees. So so that's how I connected to my work in terms of who I was, and and I wanted to really, all of my life has been to do work that can be of use to other students who, like me, have hopes and dreams, but often don't know how to realize them. So everything I've done is for, students like you all. Everything I've done, and I'm not the only one. There are a lot of professors out there who feel the same way, and we all have taken different approaches, but in the end, we're doing the same thing. It's about helping you to succeed.
I would like to add on something that I've been thinking a lot about, like even thinking about like now that I'm applying to like master's programs. I had a professor once say that, her research wouldn't have gone as far if she didn't leave some part of her identity at the door to move forward. And she was like a woman of color as well. And so I guess my question to you is, how have you navigated, working in a space that not necessarily is always inclusive of our identities or of your identity? And how do you persist, or how do you maintain like that solid like reinforcement that like, no, like this is my identity, I'm bringing it to the table how it is. And sometimes it might lead to doors closing and others not, but how has that looked for you throughout your academic career?
I've never thought of leaving my identity at the door. I mean, people know me as a Latina who studies higher education and student success. I mean, it's very clear who I am. And that's how I present myself. So I know that some people do, and that's sad. You should not have to do that. You should not have to do that. But I would assume that there might be some fields, like in STEM perhaps, where you might sometimes have to do that. But even that, I think, needs to change. We should not be content that that is something that is happening. And I hope that that will not happen to you, because who you are is who you are. No one can take that away from you. You should be proud of who you are. You should be proud of your culture. You should be proud of where you came. And anything that stands in your way, I think that is a negative thing. It's not a positive thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There is a follow-up to that question, because, and thank you for mentioning STEM, because this is one of the things that I have been really kind of struggling with, because when I was doing my doctorate, I definitely pulled in my identity as an ethnic Russian being born somewhere else, and like the idea of what it meant, and kind of my entire dissertation was me figuring out who am I, which was quite a luxury. But as when we work with students and in disciplines that kind of perceive that this idea of like that you do need to step away, what do you think is how do we validate that it's okay for students to still maintain their identity and be a chemistry major and be a biology major, where so many faculty members are just kind of like, no, there's a right and wrong answer and identity doesn't fit in. And so it's just this kind of idea of like, how do we create a narrative where students do feel that their identity can still inform them regardless of which discipline they can be, versus some disciplines where that's basically how you're pushed forward to do your research in a sense.
Yeah, give me an example of somebody giving up their identity. I guess because I haven't done it, it's hard for me to put myself in that space. So if you can elaborate on that, that would help me.
So I think when I would do interviews with students, at our center, we run an online platform that provides students with personalized advice on how to keep up in large STEM courses. Yes. And sometimes when I would talk to students trying to get their experience, a lot of them would say, they would mention things like, well, I feel like I can't really tell my advisor that I am really connected with my family and that I have to spend more time with my family, and that studying for me is difficult because I wasn't prepared, and I feel like my professors don't identify with me, so I can't really even mention to them that I'm a first gen, I'm a transfer student, and kind of not feeling comfortable sharing their experiences with their instructors because they assume that the instructors just feel like there's no place for that in biology. You just need to know the process of meiosis. Like that's all you're there to study. So that's kind of one of those things
I
I've been
see.
running into.
Okay, yeah. Well, unfortunately, I think that that there are some narratives that are rather entrenched in the academy, and that's one of them. You know, that your personal life has nothing to do with the academy, and I'm here to tell you that it does. I mean, everything is connected in life. Everything is connected. And I think it's irresponsible to be asking students to not express who they are and not talk about who they are, because who we are is part and parcel of everything that we do in our lives. And so I think that those faculty are adhering to some entrenched view that this is the way higher education needs to operate. And I hope that that can change. I know not everybody's like that, I hope, but not everybody is. And so I would tell students, connect with faculty who are validating, who are encouraging, and those are the ones that are going to help you to get through. If you deal with those other ones and you've got to take the class, but still have the backup of these other people in your life that are not going to be like this one professor who, in my view, doesn't have it right. And so that's the way that I would handle that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question, if that's okay. Hi, so thank you so much for being here. It's very valuable to hear your story. I've read your articles on
Thank you.
Yeah, validation and all that great stuff. And now listening to your story, your background, I'm very curious to know, as a first-gen student coming from under-resourced community, what were the key factors that paved your way to get to where you are now? I know you mentioned a lot of sacrifices and you mentioned connecting with faculty, but it's, as a first gen Latina, it's just very challenging to know what we need to know in order to get to maybe a place we don't know where we want to get to yet. It's a lot. I feel there's a lot of certainty, unknown things. So I think my question is, what helped pave your way and what were those motivating factors? I know you discussed, giving back to other students similar to you. So as I navigate this journey, I'm trying to, I look up to your work. And so I am curious to know what helped shape that narrative.
Okay, right. There are a number of things that come to mind in terms of being the key factors that helped me in my life. For some reason, and I maybe this is just a God-given thing, I don't know, but for some reason, I developed a pretty good ability to write and to read, which are phenomenal talents that you need to succeed in education. You also need mathematics, but, and then I hated math because I wasn't doing very well. I love biology and stuff like that, but math was like, no. But I mean, to get a doctorate, I mean, you can hire somebody to do the stat work for you and what have you, but to write, that's a special God-given talent. And I think writing has helped me to be successful. And I think also, now that I think about it, being able to speak and to communicate messages. And I've been doing that a lot. I've done it, but much more so within the past 3 or 4 years, where people will just call me and say, can you do this presentation? Just like you all did. I mean, people come knocking at my door. I'm just sitting here like everybody else, And this month alone, I think I have about 8 talks. So I'm very fortunate that that I have these blessings, and I think that those things have really helped me a great deal. But there are other strengths as well. And while my family was not able to help me with my academics, they did help me to develop a very strong work ethic. When I saw my mom and worked so hard to help the family survive, and then my dad was a tractor operator, and he worked out in 100+ degree temperatures, clearing roads with no air conditioning. And I witnessed all of that. That helped me to develop a very, very strong work ethic. And so I always strive for my work to be A+. I can't always reach that, but that's my goal. When I give a talk, I want to give an A+ talk. When I write a paper, I want to write an A+ paper. That's related, I think, to the work ethic. Because I know that being a Latina, if I turn in something that is C or D, my fear is that all Latinas will look bad. And so I carry everyone on my shoulders, and I want to make everyone look good. I want everybody to be proud and say, look at what the Latinx community can do. So that work ethic, keeps me going. I think another strength that I developed and I didn't know I had was navigational ability. And a lot of students, and I believe that all of you have that as well, we're able to navigate ourselves through college and figure things out, sometimes on our own. And I think that really, really helped me to, to keep going. I asked questions. I read things. I knocked on doors. I had that navigational ability. And then, of course, I had resilience and determination to succeed. I really, really wanted this. I had the ganas, as Jaime Escalante would put it. Getting a college degree was so important to me that nothing was going to get in my way. Nothing. Getting a doctorate was super important to me, and nothing was going to get in my way. And so I just did it. So those are some of the strengths that I believe helped me through that come to mind right now.
Thank you so much. That was very insightful. And please know that I'm using your Sante Pensante framework in my work.
Oh, you are? Who is speaking now, Sophie?
No, it's still Ana Guerrero.
Oh, Ana, you're using Sante Pensante?
Yes, I am. Read your work. I'm just talking about the school climate, campus climate, and how students, and so how, we need to really take into account students' identities as a whole. And so anyway, it's incorporated into my writing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Yes. Thank you.
That took a long time to write because it was so different from what I had done before, and I didn't know how it would be taken. Because it's kind of a little bit out there, in terms of out of the mainstream in the traditions, because it has a spiritual component to it. But I felt that this is where I am right now, and I'm going to write about this. And I have a network of people who believe in these same principles that are expressed in the book, and they were my validating agents. And they were the people that kept me going, and knowing that this was my gift to the world at that moment in time. I'm in the process of updating that book. All kinds of things get in the way. But I will be updating that book. That's one of my goals, is to get that done. So I think about that every day, but I'm going to get it done. Thank you, Ana. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Are there any more questions? I do have another question. I know I'm being greedy with the questions, but
No, it's okay.
from watching your seminars and witnessing you today, like you are a fantastic speaker. Do you have any advice for public speaking?
Thank you. Wow, I mean, nobody taught me to be a speaker. So I can't, it's hard for me to tell you, you know, because I didn't have anybody to teach me, but as I think about this a little bit more, I think one of the things that is important is that people want to hear the message, but they also are open to the emotion behind the message. When you touch their minds is one thing, but when you touch their your minds and their hearts, not too many people can do that. And so I undertake speaking in a way that I'm communicating with lots of faculty and staff across the nation in 2- and 4-year colleges and universities. And when I'm communicating a message, I want them to think about it, but I also want them to feel it. You know, and so it's with senti pensante, sensing, thinking, pedagogy, sensing, thinking, speaking, I guess. I've never thought about it in that way until now. But I think that that's what people will remember a message, you know, but when they feel it, they'll remember it more. They'll be able to process it a little bit more. And so I'm not going to say that I'm always on target. There are times that I think I've missed it, but I do want to say that 99% of the time, I get really, really good feedback, and that makes me feel really good. And I just keep going with what I'm doing. But it's not like I sat down and said, okay, you know, this is it. It just came out. It just flowed out of me. It just flowed out of me. And so, you know, this is what I do these days.
I have one last question.
Yes.
So I'm also a transfer student. This is my 2nd year, and last year was really rough for me, just like the whole transition. And then,
Where did you transfer from?
Mount San Antonio College. It's near Cal Poly Pomona in the LA area, or like past LA.
I think I've spoken there, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I've spoken at Cal Poly Pomona as well.
Oh.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So now that, again, like I'm thinking towards masters and even just like cultivating relationships with like professionals, I'm sure you at one point were a mentee and now you are a mentor to many people. What would you say was the most impactful mentorship or I guess an attribute from a mentor that you thought was really important? And what do you think was, I guess, like as a mentee, what should I be looking for? Or like, how should I be approaching it? Just because sometimes finding a mentor is very challenging.
Yeah.
Especially a mentor who's like willing to support you and follow you throughout your whole, or like the most of the part of your, like your academic career or education. So what would you say would be something that I should be looking for in a mentor for the future?
Well, you're right. You know, mentors are hard to find sometimes. And, you know, building a relationship, however, if you have a mentor and a good one and you have a good relationship with that person, that's phenomenal. But I think that there are also mentors that are going to be with you for a long time, but then there are mentors that are going to be with you for a short time, but that still is an impactful mentoring relationship. I'm thinking of the video that I showed just a little while ago of Dr. Rios, who's a professor of sociology, I believe, at your campus. And one of the things that he does is he goes out, and he was one of these low-income students who was kind of a juvenile delinquent and, you know, got past all of that and is now a professor at your campus. But now he goes back to work with kids who were like him, are like him, and try to turn their lives around. So he becomes a mentor now. But he had mentors, and he says, you know, I feel bad sometimes because I leave them to come to this place in Santa Barbara that is very different from, the place that I just left. And I wonder, am I really making a difference? But you are, because when even the small amount of time that you're there, if you're making an impact, those students will remember that for the rest of their lives. And so, don't think that just because you're not with them, throughout their lives, that you're not a mentor. You can be a mentor for a short period of time as well. And you can be a mentor for a long period of time. It would be great if you find somebody for a long period of time, but the impact that you make on students, even in that short period of time, that's going to go a long way. That's going to go a long, long way. So never underestimate the impact that you can make, even in a short amount of time. That can go a long way.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I want to say too that as you think about your future, you're going to have a lot of challenges ahead of you, a lot of challenges. And one of the things, well, here's another factor that helped me, is that I learned to deal with ambiguity. I learned to deal with ambiguity from when I was a little girl, when nothing was consistent in my life. We moved all the time. My father would supposed to pick us up on weekends, and sometimes he missed it. I never knew what to expect because nothing was consistent. And so my brain works with ambiguity very well, because in life, really, nothing is always very consistent all the time. So learning to really lean into ambiguity and saying, okay, what's there to learn here? I mean, not everything's not always going to be clear at times. And especially now, if there's ever been ambiguity in the world, it's right now, right? The world has been turned upside down. And those of us who always like structure and answers right away, I mean, you're not going to get them. You're not going to get them, Answers we need to learn are evolving. We can't always have the right answer all the time, right then and there. We have to live into the answers. And so I think having that sense of ambiguity has been very, very helpful for me. Working with ambiguity, I should say, has been very helpful for me. And so I think you guys have it too, but be more aware of it. In the Native community, and I'm, according to Ancestry.com, 34% Native, there is always a thinking of those that are coming behind us. How is our work now going to impact those that are coming behind us? And it will. That's the intergenerational cycle. I was able to change the tradition in my family, and that impacted everybody coming. Now my sister's kids are going to college, and somebody had to change that. So that and their kids are going to go to college, and those kids are going to college. See what I mean? So we have to think about what we do today is not just for us today, it's for those that are coming behind us. I also believe that it's important that you know that the work that you do now and the beauty of your work in helping others and in wanting to give back, that honors your ancestors. It honors me, and it honors our ancestors, because we're doing good things in this world. And so know that you have these challenges, but be very proud of who you are and where you came from. And keep in mind that everything that we do today has an impact, not just on today, but on everyone coming behind us. Sometimes we forget that, and we have to remind ourselves of that. But I know that just from the little I know about all of you, I know that you're doing it, and we just need to keep going with our lives in the most positive way that we can.
Thank you so much for sharing. We do have a few more minutes. I do have one final question real quick. What advice do you have for students that are walking in similar paths?
Well, just what I said, I think that, honor yourself, honor your family, keep focused, build on, know your strengths. You have you have phenomenal strengths already. I'm sure all of you have navigational ability, you're resilient, you resisted aggressions and racism and discrimination and sexism. You've got a lot going for you that sometimes people don't recognize and don't acknowledge. But you have these strengths, and those are the strengths that keep you going, and just stay focused that everything that you do is not only for you, but for those coming behind you. And when you get to my stage in life, if you can say that you left the world a better place than where you found it, I think you'll be gratified with what you did in your life.
Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate you for joining us, Dr. Rendon. We admire your work, and I can confidently say that you're an idol to many of us. With that,
thank you.
That concludes our Professor After Hours. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'll stick around for a few minutes in case there's any more questions, but yeah, you are free to go. Thank you so much.
Thanks to all of you for